Running Sentences presents Dark Covenant Kingdom, Part 1. A Wake-Up Chant. Waking up is nice. Waking up to chanting and tied to a chair, not so great. Brick, though, a young man, finds himself exactly in that situation. This story is written and narrated by Michael Hunry. It is a work of fiction, so any names, characters, businesses, events, and situations within this story are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to real people, situations, characters, businesses, events, and/or fictional businesses, characters, events, and so on and so forth is purely coincidental. Copyright 2026, Michael Hunry. All rights reserved. The chanting hadn't woken up Rick. He'd been awake for at least a few moments before it had started, but he hadn't opened his eyes yet, and he was trying to figure out where he was. His hands and legs were strapped to something. It felt like a chair, but who knew what it actually was? And his sense was slightly askew from something that had happened to him, but he couldn't quite remember. The drones of whatever those noises were starting to get on his nerves, as he was now looking about what was a really dark room for the first time. He found himself strapped to a chair which was sat upright, with a ring of monks in front of a bubbling cauldron in front of him. Next to that was another chair, with a young woman. Brick hid his efforts to look over to see more of her, but he kept peeking out of the corner of his eye. The idea of drawing attention to himself felt like it would end badly, but he could not stop himself. "What the fuck is going on here?" He whispered that, actually softly enough to draw the attention of the person next to him. "Shut up." "What?" he replied, confused by her words. "If you want to live, shut up. Don't disrupt what's going on." The chanting had grown in pace and noise, nearly drowning them out. This warning from this young woman made no sense to him, since the noise coming from these monks, priests, whoever they were, was so damned loud. And as suddenly as it was humming at a loud volume, it came to a sudden and abrupt stop. The group who had been around the cauldron now turned to look at them, their red and yellow eyes glowing in the dark space that was their hoods. "Don't speak, don't say anything," she told him. "Why?" "This is only the first part of the ceremony. They'll gladly restart it with someone else if you complain about anything." "Well, I'm not complaining, I just like to know what's going on." "Trust me when I say no you don't. Not right now, anyway." There was a heavy, jerking motion that came from the chair and was locked down on, as it suddenly just began pulling backwards, the sound of stone grinding against stone deafening the space. The chair he was attached to came to a sudden hard stop as it traveled along a track that went through the doorway that was apparently a secret entrance type door, as a stone wall ground itself against the stone, closing it up again. The room he found himself in was a slightly well-lit one with a quiet study-like space filled with bookshelves. All of those were actually empty, and then there was also the table that had some food on it. The young woman who was beside him, whose chair had come with him, jumped up. She wore a beautiful green silk-looking gown that cut quite the figure. After taking a moment to stretch, she turned and stared at him, so he returned that stare. "You're not much to look at." "I'd say the same to you, but that would be a lie." "I know, it's best not to go about lying in these situations." It appeared that she was more in the know than he was, and that meant questions needed to be asked. What situation are we even in, and are we safe to ask it in, or am I in? I don't know if you're a part of all of this. Going her head to the side, she tossed up her hair, piled around it to make it look frozen in time. It began to unravel. She either didn't notice or care about it. "You honestly don't know?" I woke up a few moments ago in a room with no knowledge of what was going on. The last thing I remember was being near a tavern, or no, sand? Former tavern? Abandoned buildings? Anyway, I was supposed to be helping some people. You're not even royalty, are you? She asked him. No, am I supposed to be? Why is that important to all of this? And can someone please remove these restraints tying me to the chair? As if the chair had heard the request or someone listening to them had, they snapped open, freeing him. Gingerly he pulled his arms while rubbing his wrists and then pulled his legs up and away from the shackles that had locked those in place. Realizing that the chair might still have more tricks up its sleeve and trap him again, in his awkward motions he tried to get off of it, only to trip on the tangle of arms and legs, falling face first into the stone floor of this room. Oh great, you're useless, she said upon seeing this. He scrambled to his feet, dusted himself off, though from the sitting for some period of time both of his arms and legs were rather tingly. How am I useless, miss? You're not the right person for this job. Great, fine, whatever. Tell whoever is in charge of whatever this is that I'm not the right person, and then we can be done with this and I can move on. She gave him a rather sharp but worried look as she came over to him, now standing in front of him with a soft scent of perfume hit him and made his nose crinkle. It was a nice scent and all that, but something about it made his nose itch and want to sneeze. Brick managed to hold that off and tried just to stand his ground. This lady was some sort of royalty, probably, who was maybe the cause of all of this. Do you want to die? She asked. No, miss. Then stop trying to talk your way into it. Okay, listen, Miss Royal, I'm guessing you're a princess of some sort, or some other form of royalty that I don't know the name for. What is going on, and why are you doing it? I'm not doing any of this. Not doing what? Brick demanded to know. I've been kidnapped and forced into this situation. That sounded like something a royal would say, to get out of being responsible for whatever was occurring. However, as he looked her over, something told him it might be true, or it might be that she just looked really cute in the dress and was distracting him, or both. It was odd, though, since he'd never really thought about meeting royalty, and, ever, and ones he'd heard about were all gluttons, reportedly anyway. Why are you free from your chair, then? I agreed to help out with the horrible people who captured me by going through with all that. That sounds really dumb, miss. I'm smart. I didn't get killed right away for not cooperating with the king and queen of this land while plotting my escape. She shot back. Okay, let's restart for a moment. Who are you? My name is Sylvia. I'm the princess for the kingdom of Avalon and the heir to the throne of that place, as well as a couple of other things. Who are you? My name is Brick, he said. She scowled even further at him. I know that commoners don't go for names all that much, but Brick, that's your name? That's what I was told, so yes. What's wrong with it, Miss Princess? It's Sylvia, and you should address me as Princess Sylvia, thank you. As for what's wrong with it, everything. It's not much of a name, and it describes a thing used in construction, not for naming people. Right, that makes no sense, but sorry, I guess. Anyway, now what the fuck is going on? This lady, Princess Royal-like figure though, was looking around worriedly, like she was expecting something else to happen. We don't have time for me to explain, but if you would listen to me, you'll probably survive. And if I don't? He questioned. You'll die then, Mr. Brick. I'd rather not see that. Why, oh Princess Sylvia? She looked at him again, worriedly. I've seen 5 people die at the hands of the king and queen here, 4 princesses and 1 commoner, all because they decided to stand up for something they believed in. It only led to them being killed. Before there was any more further explanation, a door to the room creaked its way open, and a man appeared in it. He wore a fine tailored suit, but it really did nothing for him, as it was all skin and bones. Quite literally, he almost looked like a walking skeleton. Almost. If you two would follow me, please, we can begin the next part of the ceremony. The figure vanished from the door, and Brick quickly looked over to Sylvia, who was shaking her head. She looked at him and gave him a hurry-up look before heading towards that door. Entering the hallway a few steps behind these two, Brick found himself hurrying to keep up. The walk was a fast, brisk pace affair, with no nonsense with them headed somewhere, though the stone and brick of the hallway gave him no signs of where. It only allowed for the echo of their steps to sound and bounce about. Brick wanted to open his mouth and ask questions, but there were a lot of dirty looks being tossed over this lady princess's shoulder towards him. You, sir, probably have lots of questions about things, a strange man grumbled. No, sir, no, I don't. Oh, you're a liar. How interesting. I'm sure the young lady has warned you off of saying anything, which is probably good. I really don't want to have to clean up another mess. Having managed to catch up to Sylvia's stride and being able to walk beside her, he glanced over to her for some sort of answer. This is Keaton, one of the servants of the house. He is rather rude, especially for not introducing himself, Princess Sylvia announced. Oh, yes, it would be rude, but I don't want to waste my breath on a name for a man who might soon be dead. What good is that name to me then? What say you, Lady Sylvia? You do have a point, Mr. Keaton. Yes, I do. Now, Mr. Brooke, I believe it was, welcome to the Grand Eldrick Estates, home of the King and Queen of Eldrick lands. Don't think I've ever heard of them before, Brick replied. A sharp elbow to his side made him wince and look over to Sylvia, who still had that shut-up look plastered to her face. It was kind of nice, actually, since no one ever seemed to care about him before this. Now, to have a pretty lady seem to care, if only because she'd seen far too much death, well, he would take that. If you have, and Mr. Sylvia, I'd recommend not hitting him. And Miss Sylvia, I'd recommend not hitting him much more. They will be displeased that you're interfering with the state of things. I'd rather not see more people dead, so if hitting a person achieves that, I'm going to do it, Keaton. I'd like to avoid getting hit. Then shut up, no questions, and only talk when asked a question by someone else, the princess told him. I will agree with Miss Sylvia, answer the questions of the king and queen, but don't offer anything else. Well, this sounds great, Brick said, unable to stop himself. Stopping at a door, both Sylvia and Keaton gave a look to him, and he shrugged in return, though neither said anything. Instead, Keaton knocked on the door. A moment later, he opened it and walked in, signaling that they should follow. Grand throne chamber with fine cloth wrapped around the room and ceiling greeted them, dark red with swirls of black and yellow that made up the coloring. The floor was a similar color, only made up of some sort of sand that sunk in when stepped on, but would return to its original state when the foot lifted. Brick found himself fascinated by this until they arrived at the set of chairs that the king and queen sat on. The figures in those seats glared at him, those same colors around the room adorning them, making them all look very much the same and slightly hard to see. Welcome, my soon-to-be son and daughter, the king announced. Now, my husband, we should not hurry to say such things. Neither have proven themselves worthy, though our new daughter has done a good job of agreeing with us, the queen said. Thank you, Miss Queen, Princess Sylvia replied with a bow. That is, thank you, Queen Mitra, savior of all the world, to you. Sylvia dutifully repeated the words with a bow. "No, young man, do you have anything to say for yourself?" the king said, shifting his attention back to him. "I would like an explanation as to what's going on and why you've brought me here, if you would be so kind." The king and queen both broke into grins. It was a disturbing sight, though, since they looked very much like Keaton did. Sunken skin that clung to the bone, with only like they did have a little bit of muscle left, and were mostly veiny. "A good question. We believe in the rebirth of society, and that is what we are trying to accomplish," the queen offered. "The world is far too filled with the living and the dead. Though the dead far outnumber the living, they don't get the recognition they deserve," the king said with a nod to his wife. "Me and my husband want to change that." Brick didn't think of himself as a simple person. He'd had enough schooling, maybe enough classes, but nothing that was being said sounded like it made sense. Either he was that simple and couldn't figure this out, or there was something more nefarious going on and his mind was taking its time to catch up. He didn't have time to sit around and wait for it to come to him, so he simply nodded, "Okay." "And you need me and the princess here to make that happen? How, if I may ask?" "Yes," the king replied. "We need you two to make sure that a ritual is sealed." "That is all we will tell you about it. Now for the very important question, Mr. Brick. Will you help us, or will you go against us?" the queen asked coldly. The question from the queen really didn't make any sense to him, and he felt an odd sensation crawling at the back of his mind. Can I ask one quick question before I answer that, queen?" They both looked disappointed at him, but the king waved his hand and said, "One question. If I agree, I'm not going to be killed, right? Not sacrificed or anything like that." "No, you will not be killed or sacrificed. Now, what is your answer? Hurry, we have a tight time schedule to get to the next part of this ceremony." He desperately wanted to give himself more time to think, but nothing he came up with in his mind was going to do that. Finally, he blurted out, "I'll agree." "Finally, a person who sees light. Isn't it great, Queen? Mr. Keaton, please take these two to the next part of the test. You know what to do." The man or servant named Keaton gave a bow and turned, waving them towards the door that they'd come through. For the first time, Brick saw something different than the confidence and annoyance in Sylvia's face. She looked rather apprehensive, like now she had to put on a strong face for whatever came next. Escorted out of the room and down the hallway to another door, Brick wondered if he could overpower this Keaton. The answer being probably, since the man didn't look like he could do anything without any help. But without knowing his way around here, it felt like a bad idea. Plus, Sylvia kept shooting him looks, so he figured he had some sort of expression on his face that said he was planning something. Only they entered into a nice chamber, a round space, that had a hole in the middle of the room. There was a gentle slope in this whole room, going down to that center point. "So what are we doing here?" Brick asked. "I don't know. I never got this far with anyone else. They were all idiots who tried things. Why didn't you?" "I figured it would only hurt my chances of running away if I tried something." "Oh, good. You do have some intelligence, then." "The sarcasm, Miss Princess, it isn't going to help us." "Well, it helps me deal with this situation, so it's sticking around." It was finally his turn to give her a glare, which he did so with a bit of glee, but didn't waste too much time on that. The door had been shut by this butler person, which had left them alone in this room, which as it began to rumble. What's going on?" "I already said I don't know. What would change in that time?" "I already figured that out based on how uncertain you looked earlier coming in, but I was asking the room, or maybe Keaton, or anyone who can hear us," Brick said in frustration. "I don't think anyone can," Sylvia replied. trying to figure out what to do next as he listened to Sylvia. None of this made any sense, and these people wanted to raise the dead? Was that what they were saying? He had settled on that idea, but it didn't feel like it was the complete answer to what was going on. Why would the king and queen need a son and daughter? That was also another point of problem. And who weren't actually related to them? Was that going to cause problems? He didn't have much time to think about any of this. The ceiling of the room began to open with spots and little siphons poking out, dripping liquid. "What is that?" he asked upon seeing this. "I think this room is being flooded," the princess said. "They said they weren't going to kill us or sacrifice us." "Did you actually trust what they told you?" He shook his head no. "You told me to, princess." "Oh, I take back the intelligence part. You really are an idiot." The drips of liquid turned into a dribble and then a steady flow from these holes. It was a dark, deep red color, one that Brick associated with blood. "What if, and hear me out on this, it isn't about to kill us?" "So tell me what's going on then," the princess asked. "They like the undead and all of that. What if they're using blood-like substance to clean us for this stage?" "That's ridiculous. How would they even get enough blood to clean us, and why shower us from the ceiling?" Brick held out his hands out in a "I don't know" fashion. "It's not my area of expertise. It was an idea. It's just a thought I had, since they have us going through certain stages for their big plans, I guess. They're going to soak us in blood. What are these fools even doing?" This red liquid came down, gushing all over them. Neither had taken many steps around the area, but they still got drenched in this stuff. It splashed all over the place, then circulated into a weak whirlpool in the hole in this room, and drained down that hole at the center. Then, abruptly, it was all over, and they were just soaking. "Not so stupid, now am I?" "You had a lucky guess, Brick. Don't think you'll be so lucky next time." He grinned at her as the door opened, and Keaton poked his head inside. The sight of the man was fine until a gloop of liquid dropped right onto his face, which then dripped off. Keaton did not bother trying to clean it off. "The next part of your test is coming up. Please hurry," the butler announced. "Do we get to clean off?" the princess requested. "That is not part of the plan, no." "What is the plan, and what are we doing next?" Brick asked. "You'll have a study session." Looking over to Sylvia, Brick wasn't sure if he understood what this meant, and why couldn't they get cleaned if they were supposed to study? Dealing with books would get me this sort of mess and blood-like substance all over them onto the books and would make them unreadable. Not that he really cared, but it still felt wrong. "Are you sure you want that?" Brick asked the butler. "It is not what I want that matters, Mr. Brick. Now come. They walked out of this weird chamber, which appeared to have accomplished nothing other than not drowning, even though there wasn't much of risk of that occurring, out into the hallway, dripping the entire way, a couple doors down, into a new room. This space was a grand library that stretched up at least 5 or 6 stories tall, with books upon books. Keaton had once again opened the door for them, and then once they had entered, shut it, leaving them alone. "I get we were supposed to study, but why leave us alone and in this state?" Rick asked as he looked around. "I guess they're indoctrinating us in their ways. That's all I can think of. It's really not nice at all." "You agreed to do this," he pointed out. "So did you, Brick." "To survive whatever this is? Yeah, I agreed to all of this, but at your encouragement, you seem to be willing to throw yourself into the matter for whatever reasons." "I value being alive, that's my reasoning," Sylvia protested. "And that's mine as well. Whatever. Let's just explore this space. and study or something. You expect to find something here? Why else would we be put in here? You're a princess. Shouldn't you be able to read or something? I have read a whole lot, yes. But what are we going to learn from some crazy people? He looked at her in wonderment. Not that long ago she'd been whispering to him not to say anything that would offend these nobles out loud. Now here she was, doing exactly that. Had the bath and liquids snapped her judgment? For the moment he worried and looked about for anyone who might be watching them or listening in on them. We learned to keep ourselves alive, right, princess? And by being mostly quiet, like you told me to be. I'm really starting to not feel it's worth it at all. The sound of clapping suddenly caught their attention as a strict-looking woman in a black dress emerged from the shadows of the bookshelves. She did not have the same look as the others. In fact, she looked almost normally human, aside from the dour expression she wore on her face. My students, the lady said to them. Are we, miss? Hi. Yes, Miss Sylvia, you are my student, as you must learn the ways of this kingdom. It will not be as thorough as it ought to be, but we cannot be picky these days. Brick felt a little ridiculous as he raised his hand and also realized that asking questions might make him lose his head. Still, it was already up, and this lady was looking at him curiously. You can't be picky, miss? He asked. The king and queen want to make sure this kingdom, this livelihood that they've created, lasts a lifetime. You two are the next steps in doing that, as you will be wed and soon be named princess and prince of this land. You must learn a lot about it. His eyebrows going up in surprise, Brick wasn't sure if his eyes managed to stay in his skull as he felt like it should pop out at that declaration. His gaze now met Sylvia's as she, too, had a look of surprise on her face. You're going to teach us to be the next in line for this kingdom? He asked, really unsure of those words. That is what was requested of me, so yes. Are you being threatened, Miss Teacher, to do their bidding as well? Miss Sylvia, that is not a wise question to ask. They have their ears everywhere and do what they want with the information that they gather. The weakest of words can be used against you. I think you would have learned that lesson already. I did not expect to be kidnapped and then drowned in some sort of liquid, which, by the way, please tell me it is not blood, teacher, Sylvia requested. I cannot tell you what it is, Miss Sylvia. No one has informed me about that part, but we can go learn about it if you'll follow me. Do we actually have a choice in the matter? No, you do not, Mr. Brick. At least of all, if you don't want me telling the royals that you've been questioning things. They do hate questions. With a nod from him and a grumpy, reluctant shrug from Sylvia, they moved deeper into the library. It took a few minutes of trekking, though they found themselves soon seated at a table in front of a chalkboard. You're really going to teach us all about this place? Brick asked. Not today, no. My job is to keep this whole process moving along. To that end, Mr. Brick, I inform you of the process you're currently going through and what to expect next. They really should have done that before the bath of blood, Princess Sylvia interjected. Yes, it probably should have been done better, but this is the order in which things must be done according to them, Miss Princess Sylvia. Are you ready to learn a little bit? Go ahead, bore us to death with learning about what comes next. I assure you it will not be boring, Mr. Brick. Great, so tell us what happens next, dear teacher. Your next step is another prayer session, one that will lead to the planned session of marriage. What do you mean, marriage? Sylvia asked, holding her hand up in the air. You're saying that we have to get married to one another in order to live? Brick added. Yes, that is exactly what is going to happen, their teacher said with a nod, yes. To one another, me and this Mr. Brick. You will marry Mr. Brick, and he will marry you, Miss Sylvia. I'm not sure why this is such a hold-up. You're both decent enough-looking people. I'm quite pretty, thank you very much. Plus, I actually am a princess. We don't go around marrying people that aren't of some sort of nobility, Sylvia said coldly. The teacher offered Sylvia a rueful smile for what she said. I'm afraid you won't like that I have to tell you that Mr. Brick is being raised in station. The king and queen have found him worthy, so, technically he's probably a viscount or something like that now. I'm being made royalty, just like that? Brick asked. Yes, the king and queen can do what they wish, so you need to be higher in station in order to continue this mission assigned to you. Do you wish to back out? It will mean your death awaits you if you do turn it down, the teacher said. Brick shot a look over to Sylvia, who was seated not close to him. There was this sort of shocked expression on her face that had pretty much frozen her. He worried that she was just going to shut down and get herself killed because of all of this. That was not something he wanted on his conscience, and least of all because she did help him out first. So I'm a royal through this, we're married and so on and so forth. Then what? Then what horrors fall onto us? The marriage must be consummated, and you must have a child. A look of shock and surprise now took over Brick as he felt himself phrasing up in the same way. He was ready for exactly none of this, and they wanted everything from him. And then what? They'd rule a kingdom? That didn't seem likely to him, but to say that out loud, that was risking a lot. Now after that part, you must take part in a few more ceremonies. These are mostly prayer sessions, and then for the most exciting bit. Exciting? Sylvia asked. Yes, Sylvia, princess of this fine kingdom. You get to go to war. And we can't turn any of this down, Miss Teacher? Sylvia asked. Not if you want to live, no, Sylvia. A thought struck Brick. It probably wouldn't work, but maybe it would be okay for him to say this out loud. Best to get it said and see how things went. Their teacher seemed to be very happy to point out all of this on the blackboard behind her. Is there a time frame for when we have all to do all of this? What do you mean, Mr. Brick? To have the kid, it would take a while, right? Brick said. Well, you either do it quickly, or they will find someone else who will do it for you and get rid of you in the process. Both of you, maybe, potentially. With those words and this whole scenario bombarding Brick, he sat back in his chair and really didn't feel remotely possible to get out of any of this. The end of part 1 of Dark Convent Kingdom. Thank you for listening.